we'll also have a class on other aspects of Divine Mother and working with that. But today we're talking about energy and power aspect of Divine Mother, which is very appropriate for Chandigarh. Yeah, I think it's partly why our monastery was drawn here, because we could have chosen anywhere in India to settle our monastery and buy land and build a monastery. And somehow we were drawn here. And only later did we find out that Swami Kriyananda said that if he had to reincarnate, he would reincarnate in the Punjab region because of the energy and the willpower that is here in the people. And that energy is here. You see it in the people, and it's such a joy to see it. And this is the power aspect of God. You know, Yogananda said that God has 8 aspects: peace, calmness, joy, love, wisdom, power or energy. Peace and calmness, did I say those already? Light and sound, thank you. And she is all those aspects of God. Swami said one time, he said that when he talks about God, he uses the word God. In his own life, though, his relationship to God, he would always relate to God as Divine Mother. And so this afternoon, we'll talk more about these other aspects of God, of Divine Mother. But today it's about this power aspect, because this is why Swamiji said he wanted to reincarnate in this area, because it's that important to have that energy and power. And it's so important to learn how to tune into it, because it doesn't come passively to us. The other morning I was trying to get out of bed and the alarm went off, and it was like the Shakti wasn't there. The energy wasn't there, and I said, okay, I'm made of energy. I'm one with the universe of power and energy, every cell of my body. So lift me up, take me out of bed. And it didn't happen. So I realized, okay, I think I need to use my own willpower to get started. And I did, just like I've done every morning in my life. And once I used some willpower to get going, to get out of bed, to do my sadhana, to do my Kriya practice and to meditate, then I started feeling the divine, and even before that, not after, but during that I felt the divine energy flowing through me and flowing into me. But it took me using my willpower to take that step and to cooperate with grace, as Swamiji would call it. He said that every yoga technique and practice in some way cooperates with divine grace, or an aspect of divine grace. And willpower in some ways is the most important. And this is why Yogananda talked so much about the use of willpower, because it's actually absolutely necessary to develop really strong willpower in order to really tune in strongly to that divine grace power and energy of Divine Mother of God. I was thinking, when I was in bed that morning, actually, I was thinking this analogy before I got going, that a car engine, many people probably don't know. In America, we learn about cars and engines and how things work and fixing them. But a car engine, the key does not start the engine directly. There's a whole step-by-step process that it has to go through. And the main step is that the key, when you turn it in ignition, there's something called the starter motor. There's an electric motor that's just about this big heavy thing. And if that's not there, the engine won't start and the car won't get going. If it's failing, which it does sometimes, you have to replace it, the engine won't start and the car won't run at all. And that starter motor, the key hooks that starter motor up, draws the power from the battery, and it's an electric motor. And when you turn the key and you hear that thing, that sound, that's the starter motor. And then the engine, it engages the engine, and the power of that starter motor gets the engine going. And then when the engine going, the starter motor stops and the engine runs on itself. The analogy breaks down here because we can't just use willpower and get the engine going and then lay back and it runs on its own. We have to keep using willpower. But the willpower is like that starter motor in the car. We won't get tuned into divine energy without willpower and without putting out that kind of energy. And another way of looking at this is that if you are jumping onto a moving train, Haridas, Nayaswami Haridas uses analogy. He used to jump on a lot of moving trains when he was a young man, freight trains. You'd jump on and get a free ride. And he pointed out that if you jumped onto a moving train, if it was moving and you just were standing still and jumped, And maybe some of you have jumped on passenger trains like this. If you just stand still and jump, it'll knock you over. You have to run a little bit along with the train and then jump. So you have to use some willpower. And this is a better way of looking at how we cooperate with divine grace as energy. It's not just a matter of getting the starter motor going, it is, but then it's this working together with divine willpower. And the Yogananda had affirmations and this idea that, Divine Mother, I want your willpower to work through my own willpower. And when our willpower is divinely guided into doing the right things rather than the wrong things, then we also are cooperating with divine grace. And so this is the power of will. Yogananda defined willpower as desire plus energy directed towards fulfillment. And to me, this is one of the most important things Yogananda said, because willpower and the understanding of it is that important. Desire plus energy directed towards fulfillment. And it can be wrong desires. Wrong desires can get willpower going. And for yogis, of course, we want to be really clear that our desire is directed towards God. And if our desire is more and more directed towards God and towards freedom, towards moksha, and this is why it's important to work on developing intense yearning and love for God, then that desire plus energy, hitting the key in the ignition and getting the starter motor going and getting the willpower going, directed towards fulfillment, meaning that we focus it through our meditation practices, through concentration, through effort. And so when we use willpower in that way, it ends up with fulfillment, meaning fulfillment of our wish to be merged back into God. And so this is the beauty of the whole spiritual path that Yogananda, the way he explained it, the way he gave it to us, the practices, the exercises that he gave to us. And so the energization exercises are a very powerful tool for that. They're really, one, a tool for developing more willpower. The greater the will that we use when we practice them, the greater the flow of energy. But they're also a tool for tuning in to divine energy as we practice them. Swami Kriyananda describes doing the energization exercises with a brother disciple. These are exercises that Yogananda taught for those who may not know them. And if you don't know them, then learn them. You can learn them here. And when he was doing the energization exercises with this brother disciple, this man, Brother Bhaktananda, was going, "Pump it in, Divine Mother, pump it in." And he was really consciously tuning in to Divine Mother as power. And so this is really the importance of all these practices that we have, practicing them in the right way, with the right consciousness, but also with the right understanding of why we do these things. Because if we're really informed with our understanding of why we work with willpower and energy on this highest level that we're talking about, that's when we get the most results. And so just to be aware and informed as we do these things. Now, the other thing that gets this energy going is, Master said one time that the best technique to practice during the day, as much as you can, is to concentrate at the spiritual eye, or to bring our energy and attention up to the spiritual eye as often as we can, because that brings the energy up. That uses the will. Concentration is a form of will. And by bringing our mind and our concentration up there as often as we can, it starts to get us in tune with the divine. Interestingly, he said that, Swamiji, that when you do this technique but you're not practicing devotion, it develops ruthlessness. And what the idea is that if we just have willpower and energy without compassion, without softness and kindness added to it, it just becomes ruthless energy and just power over others. And you see people who have this, more, this lack of Divine Mother's love with willpower and shouting slogans, even in the cause of religion, it can become a little ruthless and unkind. And so both are necessary. Yogananda once said that when he would practice this thing during the day of bringing his attention here, he said that he would talk to Divine Mother there as part of that practice. So this is the power of working with these practices every day that our teachers gave us. Now, I'm going to read something that Swami Kriyananda said, some ways to develop willpower that are very interesting because they don't sound like ways of developing willpower. This is in one of his books. And they're just nice, they're fun exercises to do, but they also help us get a better understanding of what willpower is. And Swamiji writes, and I think he uses some humor here in the beginning, you'll see. The greater the flow of energy to the brain also, as a result of habitually willing oneself to think deeply or creatively, the greater one's mental capacity. This is indeed the simple secret of genius, an abundance of mental energy. The weaker the flow of energy to the brain, on the other hand, the duller a person's awareness becomes. And this is the simple secret of stupidity. I think he was having some fun there. Neither stupidity nor genius, however, can be achieved quickly. It takes time for energy to open up new channels in the brain, or for a lack thereof to close existing channels. So he's saying we can work on intelligence or stupidity. It's up to us what we do and how we act, but it is a conscious choice of will for us to make. And people who are born intelligent, it's good karma from the past, from developing these things. And if they waste that intelligence and don't use it in an uplifted way, then it gets lost, and then they learn the lesson again. We get endless opportunities to reincarnate and learn our lessons. Here are a few simple rules for developing willpower. 1, never allow yourself to dwell on the no-saying principle. Learn always to say yes to life. This is really one of the best ways of developing this positive, dynamic, enthusiastic willpower, because we think of willpower as grim. And just having fun with, saying yes to things that come at us. Things, because sometimes a test comes, and we think, oh no, not this again, and we turn away and our energy goes down, and that's the no-saying principle that Swamiji talked about. And just develop the habit of saying yes, even when a test comes, saying, yes, Divine Mother, here's a test, and give me the energy to deal with it, and thank you. And just, I was going through a period, I've shared this before, where I was just going through a lot of health challenges, and there was a lot of mental resistance to waking up and doing some early morning duties that I had to do. And just, I got tired of that no-saying attitude as the very first thought when I would wake up in the morning. And so I developed the habit of saying right as soon as I woke up, out loud, I would say, thank you, with like an exclamation point, as a way of saying, thank you, God, for this opportunity. And it just turned the energy around. It was just a way of saying yes to life and to whatever was coming at me. Number 2, look always for solutions instead of concentrating too much on your problems. Look always for solutions instead of concentrating too much on your problems. That touches on what the story I just told, because when we have problems and we focus and dwell on the problems, it pulls the energy down. And there's a bit of a no-saying principle, saying, I have a problem, I can't deal with it, I don't know how to deal with it, and I'm stuck. And it's almost an affirmation of being stuck. And in order to find a solution to a problem, we have to uplift our energy. Swami Kriyananda talked about how problems are found, or solutions are found more on the superconscious, uplifted level. Problems are more on the subconscious, downward pulling level. And so in order to go into the realm where solutions are hanging out, we have to lift our energy up and go to that realm. Master said thoughts are universally and not individually rooted, meaning that solutions, they're out there, waiting for us to find them. And where do you find the solutions? It's not kind of stumbling around in the dark looking downwards, it's looking upwards in meditation, in upliftment. And that's where we find solutions to all problems. And there is a solution to every problem, if we just look hard enough and in the right way, especially. Number 3, this one's interesting. Look for goodness in people. Don't concentrate on their faults. Look for goodness in people. Don't concentrate on their faults. What does this have to do with willpower? It's very interesting that Swamiji would put that in these exercises for developing willpower. And I can think of 2 ways that it does. One is direct. It is a choice of will, whether we are looking for the good or the negative in people. It really is a choice. It may not seem like it, but it is a choice. Each person has some good qualities, some negative qualities, a mixture of things, and it's our choice. And one of the problems is that over many lifetimes, we've developed many habits, which are just ways of doing things that are not in the highest way, and we develop good habits too, but I'm talking about the bad habits. And a lot of these bad habits are really just mental attitudes, a habit of being critical and looking for the worst in someone. And if we're passive in our energy, the energy tends to go to those old patterns because it's just, there's a groove, Master said, a groove in the brain. It's like a groove in the spine. And that energy is habituated to going all the way, always in that direction, unless we use willpower. I had this experience where I was, many of you I think maybe have heard the story. I was at Ananda village when I was living there, and I lived in the same home for about 17 years. And Ananda village is a vast place. It's like 900 acres. And I moved to a new place all the way on the other side of Ananda village. And you know, some months after I had moved, I was at our Sunday Satsang there in the village, and I was driving home. And I was in sort of a passive, ruminative kind of state of mind where I was not really focused in high energy. And I was driving and moving along, and all of a sudden, I found myself in my old driveway, all the way on the other side of Ananda village. It was like, how did I ever get here? And I think a lot of us ask this question in our mental attitudes, how did I ever get here with this attitude and with this habit? And it's because I had driven that route so many times. The energy was just habituated to going that way. And after that Sunday satsang, I was in sort of a passive, non-will state of mind, and the energy just went down that old route. And then I woke up and said, okay, I got to put out willpower and I have to concentrate. And so unless we put out willpower, it's difficult to change old ways of thinking, old habits. The other thing this does, looking for goodness in people, it gets us in tune with the divine energy by looking for the good in people. God and the Guru look for the good in all of us. This was one of the great things about being around Swami Kriyananda, is that he saw the best in each of us. He saw the potential for each of us to become saints. We didn't see it, but he saw it, and he wasn't even thinking or looking at our faults. Yes, sometimes he would correct us and guide us in a certain direction, but because he was looking for the good, even though he didn't, it's not like he was always complimenting us how great we were, and you're such a good person, and you know, his vibration drew it out of us and uplifted us just by his consciousness looking for the good. And we can do that. You don't have to be a great saint like him just to see the good in people, and even without saying anything, it draws it out. He would correct us at times. I'll share a story that's relevant to this, to the whole thing of the starter motor, is that he, when I was on his staff, asked me to do a project for him. And I was having difficulty finding out how to do it and getting the right help. And I was I had a hard time getting moving with it. Like the starter motor wasn't engaged. And a few days later, he asked me, so have you done it? Have you made progress? And I sort of hemmed and hawed and, and he just said really strongly, I don't think I ever heard him shout, but he said this with a lot of power. He said, Divine Mother's not going to do it for you. And I was like, okay, yes, sir, thank you. And she wasn't going to do it for me. I had to engage the starter motor and get going with it. But in a way, he was also recognizing my own innate willpower and ability to tune in to Divine Mother and to start acting and doing it. So there's a few more of these. The fourth one, train yourself to face life's challenges vigorously, always affirming, I can, even when your mental habits cry out in protest. Don't be ridiculous. How can you possibly? And this is because God can do it through us. Yes, we have to put out the energy, but the saints and the masters, they went through every single test and challenge that we're going through, and from the same level of spiritual evolution that we're in. And they did it, and we can do it. The fact that they did it really is the greatest proof that we can do it too. Number 5, set yourself specific tasks to accomplish. Small ones at first, then increasingly challenging ones. Be sure to see each one through to completion. And this is just take on new things. I think as adults, sometimes we stop taking on new creative endeavors. Learn a musical instrument or do something that you haven't done before. Develop an exercise regime or do something that requires fresh new engagement of energy. Because when we keep that alive and keep doing that, then our willpower remains strong, but we also just have this fresh, enthusiastic attitude about life. And you see children learning new things all the time. And I think as adults, we kind of, I know it all now, and I just need to go to work and do my job and learn new ways of doing things, especially, even if it's just a new way of doing what we're already doing in a creative way. And again, creative application of mind, Swamiji, as I said earlier, develops willpower. The last one, number 6, here is a technique that can help you to develop all-conquering willpower. Concentrate at the point between the eyebrows, and around that point revolve the thought of increasingly powerful willpower. Then affirm, with ever greater conviction and magnetism, my will is one with thy will, united to thine, my will can move mountains. And this really touches on my will is united to thy will, which consciously and always try to find ways to unite our will with God's will. And that can come from seva, helping others in a way that is tuning into what God wants us to do or how God would act. It can mean in our daily life, just our actions, our habits, our daily routine. And when we start applying our will in that divine way, again, that's this cooperation with grace. That's where Divine Mother as power holds our hand and walks with us and helps us have the courage and the strength. Just you see this with children when a child is facing a test or going to its first day of school, and the mother or the father holds its hands and marches up to school with that child. There's the divine power of the mother and the father has been added to that child's own willpower. And so the more we do this, the more we find that we start being in this flow of grace, and that more and more that God's power starts flowing through us, easily and naturally even. Swamiji has said, and we've all experienced, that this is a lifelong practice. It's not like suddenly you figure it out and you hit the switch and from now on all is good, because we get into those old habits and old ways of thinking. And so it's a lifelong practice of using willpower in everything that we do. But when we do that, we see that our life becomes completely different. We start to really gain control of our life in some ways because it's been empowered with the divine power. And that's what God wants for us, is not for God, Divine Mother, to do it for us completely, but for us to work with the divine. And I'll just share one more final way of doing this, which is try to act as God would act. And just when we act especially in situations with being with other people, with family, ask what would Divine Mother do? And how would Divine Mother treat this person? Would she treat this person with criticism and judgment the way I'm habituated to doing, or would she give divine love? And sometimes she would give divine strength and power. It's like sometimes she can give a very powerful scolding, if needed. And so try to act in accordance with what the divine would be doing. And we'll find that even just the mental effort to try to do that starts to get us in tune with the divine more and more, and starts our actions to be getting more and more in tune with the divine. So this is a great adventure that we're on, of ever more trying to tune in to that power of the divine flowing through us. And one of the wonderful things that we have here at Ananda, Chandigarh, and all of our centers is the opportunity just to step into that by coming to a satsang, by serving here, by being part of what we are doing here. And that's honestly, for myself and others who have been doing these things for many decades, that's the huge part of the power of it, is doing it with others who are doing it. It's like, that's the highest way, I think, to cooperate with that grace and get swept up in that divine power flowing through us. So may we all find that freedom that we're trying to achieve through cooperation with divine will and divine power.